The presence of corrupt police officers not only tarnishes the reputation of law enforcement, but also poses significant threats to societal well-being and safety. These 10 officers crossed the line and faced the consequences of their actions. Michael Valva, a former NYPD officer, was sentenced to 25 years to life after being convicted of murder last month in the January 2020 death of his 8-year-old son, Thomas, who was forced to sleep in the family's freezing Long Island garage. Thomas Valva and his older brother Anthony had spent 16 hours in that garage with no heat, no bathroom access, no mattress, and no blankets on a night when the temperature outside plunged. According to prosecutors, Thomas Valva woke up on the cement floor, had an accident, and soiled his pants. Home surveillance camera evidence submitted at trial showed his father screaming at him, threatening him, and ordering him outside in the sub-freezing temperatures to hose him down with water. Thomas Valva lost consciousness and fell face first, several times, into the backyard concrete paver patio. Prosecutors say his father delayed calling 911 for at least an hour. By the time his son got to the hospital, his body temperature was 76.1 degrees. Defense attorney Anthony LaPinta had tried to argue that it was Michael Valva's former fiancée, Angelina Polina, who had the idea to put the brothers, both with autism, in the garage as punishment for urinating and defecating in the house. LaPinta said Michael Valva cared about his children and didn't want them to die. He said it was an accident. Prosecutors showed extensive surveillance video from inside the home and argued that the two young boys had been beaten and starved for years. Michael Dotro, former Edison police officer Michael Dotro, scratched his neck and forehead but expressed no remorse before being sentenced to 20 years in state prison for setting fire to the home of a superior officer because of an argument they had, while the police captain and his family were inside asleep. He offered no apology to the family of Captain Mark Anderko, who had to flee the burning house, no remorse for the witness he tampered with, and no remorse for the other officers who lost their jobs because of their involvement with him. His wife, Alicia, yelled out, "You're a monster. You're a manipulative monster," before being told by a sheriff's officer she would have to remain quiet or risk being removed. While a trial date had not yet been set on the attempted murder and arson charge, the jury had been picked and opening arguments were set to begin last month in the official misconduct case when Dotro was arrested and put in jail for stalking and intimidating his former girlfriend, and made false police reports about her, using his position as a police officer to harass her. That offense occurred while Dotro was on probation from a prior offense. Dotro was also accused of checking police records and notifying his wife of reports related to a tire-slashing incident involving a woman he was allegedly involved with. He also was accused of purchasing marijuana for his wife while in uniform, as well as some weapons charges. Marijuana also was allegedly found in his police duty bag. Daniel Holtzclaw. Daniel Holtzclaw is a former police officer in the United States. He was convicted in December 2015 of multiple counts of rape, sexual battery, and other sex offenses while working for the Oklahoma City Police Department. Holtzclaw was convicted of 18 counts involving 8 different women. According to the police investigators, Holtzclaw abused his position as an officer by running background checks to find information that could be used to coerce victims into sex. During the trial, the defense questioned the victims' credibility during cross-examination, bringing up their criminal records. Of the 13 women who accused Holtzclaw, several had criminal histories such as drug arrests, and all of them were African American. The prosecution argued that victims were deliberately chosen by Holtzclaw for these reasons. Holtzclaw pleaded not guilty to all charges. On December 10, 2015, he was convicted on 18 of 36 charges, and on January 21, 2016, he was sentenced to 263 years in prison. Wayne Jenkins. Jenkins joined Baltimore's police department in 2003, first becoming a beat cop and patrolling the streets of Baltimore. During his time on the streets of Baltimore, Jenkins was involved in several arrests that resulted in the injuries of the people he took into custody. Jenkins would often be caught in a lie while giving evidence to a jury, but no complaints were put on his record. For example, in January 2006, Jenkins and Sergeant Michael Fries had an altercation with brothers Charles and Robert Lee after they continued to drink beer on the front step of their grandmother's home when the policeman had told them to stop. During the altercation, a passerby named George Sneed was assaulted by Officer Robert Sorello, who broke his jaw, leading Sneed to sue. At the trial 4 years later, Jenkins and his fellow officers claimed that the witness had been throwing bottles at them, but security camera footage shown at the trial proved what Jenkins claimed was not true. Sneed's attorney Michael Pulver concluded, per Fenton, that the officers had fabricated this story to hide the fact that they intentionally assaulted and falsely arrested and imprisoned Mr. Sneed. It was in 2007 that Jenkins became a part of the Gun Trace Task Force, a new unit of plainclothed officers focused on targeting suspected criminals believed to have big supplies of guns and drugs, in a bid to reduce the city's high murder rate. However, the focus on quantity rather than quality led Jenkins and the 7 other GTTF officers to start planting evidence, take money from the homes they invaded, and even resell the drugs they seized back onto the streets. A 2-year federal investigation into the GTTF resulted in all 8 officers and 1 Philadelphia officer getting charged with several offenses, including racketeering, in 2017. Jenkins was given a 25-year prison sentence on June 7, 2018, which he is currently in the midst of serving at a federal prison in Kentucky. In September 2021, Jenkins spoke with BBC journalist Jessica Lussenhop from behind bars, and he claimed he never took money from Baltimore citizens. Jenkins said, "I never had theft complaints because I never took money off individuals. I did give drugs to Donnie, the guy who testified he and Jenkins sold $1 million worth of narcotics. For the last couple of years I was police, but I didn't take people's money because then they would know you were dirty." Explaining the tactics of the GTTF, he also told the publication, "This is a saying we state. Don't let probable cause stand in the way of a good arrest. If you've got to lie about what you've seen or what you heard or what you witnessed, as long as he's dirty, he's got the drugs and he's got the guns and he did the crime. Just get him." Zachary Wester. Wester was found guilty at trial last year for racketeering, fabricating evidence, official misconduct, false imprisonment, and possession of controlled drugs and paraphernalia. The son of a longtime lawman, Wester got his first job as a deputy in 2015, working for the Liberty County Sheriff's Office, though he left after less than a year amid allegations of sexual misconduct. He started working in 2016 at the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, developing a reputation as an aggressive patrol deputy with an impressive number of drug arrests. By summer 2018, prosecutors in Marianna began to get suspicious of Wester based in part on inconsistencies in his police reports and body camera footage. One particularly damning body cam video showed him with a plastic baggie in his hand before searching a woman's pickup truck and arresting her for possession of methamphetamine. He was suspended and later fired amid an internal investigation and the discovery of a trove of ready-to-plant drugs and paraphernalia stashed away in the trunk of his patrol car. 33 people whose lives were upended by Zach Wester reached a settlement in their federal lawsuits against the former North Florida deputy, who's serving 12 years in prison for planting meth on innocent drivers. Dennis Perkins. A former Louisiana sheriff's deputy has been given a 100-year prison sentence after pleading guilty to a spree of sexual abuse crimes, including child abuse. Dennis Perkins, 47 years old, will spend the rest of his life in prison after he pleaded guilty to a slew of offenses ranging from rape, child abuse images, and video voyeurism to contaminating food with a bodily substance, authorities said. He has no possibility of being released on parole after state prosecutors struck a deal with him to plead guilty to avoid a trial that would have required young victims to testify about traumas they had endured. Before his arrest in 2019, Perkins had spent 17 years as a deputy with the Sheriff's Office of Livingston Parish, outside Louisiana's capital of Baton Rouge. His now ex-wife, Cynthia Perkins, formerly a public school teacher, was also arrested. She pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for a 41-year sentence as part of an agreement that would have made it mandatory for her to testify against Dennis Perkins if he stood trial. Dennis Perkins faced nearly 80 felony charges after his arrest at one point and was fired from the sheriff's office. Braulio Gonzalez, a former Miami-Dade police officer charging with molesting multiple girls, was sentenced to life in prison. The disgraced cop's arrest in 2018 came after one of the victims told her psychologist that Gonzalez sexually assaulted her when she was just 8 years old. That victim told detectives that Gonzalez would wake her up to molest her, and once he held a gun to her head. He allegedly threatened the victim by saying he would kill her and anyone else in the house if she didn't comply with his demands. The kidnapping charge stems from Gonzalez's alleged actions during what the jury agreed was his first encounter with one of the minors. Gonzalez's lawyer worked out a deal that allowed him to await trial while under house arrest. The defendant continued to collect his taxpayer-funded salary even after his arrest, as his department opted to put him on paid leave. Police records show that Gonzalez allegedly assaulted other women before the charges that led to his conviction this week. 3 of his ex-girlfriends claimed to have suffered severe injuries after Gonzalez reportedly attacked them, with one suffering a broken nose and another a broken arm, according to police records. 2 of the women claimed he pointed a firearm at them as well, those records show. Even after his superiors learned this information, he did not lose his job with the Miami-Dade police force. Kenneth Blue. Jennifer Webb was 8 months pregnant with a baby boy she decided to name Braxton. On August 30, 2011, Jennifer's remains were found near a drainage ditch, with an extension cord wrapped around her neck and attached to the roof rack of her vehicle. It looked like she'd hung herself. The first Buena Vista Township police officer to arrive at the scene was Kenneth Blue. Upon talking to those closest to Jennifer Webb, it came to light that she'd claimed that a man she had been friends with for almost a decade, police officer Kenneth Blue, was her baby daddy. And soon, the evidence against Ken kept piling on, from his and only his fingerprints, non-bloody, being on the suicide note to his blood on the inside of a latex glove, recovered from the crime scene to the scratches he had. Everything incriminated him. Kenneth Blue was married with a family of his own, so he denied having sexual relations with Jennifer Webb at first and also hesitated in providing a DNA sample, but then he conceded. The DNA test confirmed he was the father of the unborn child. Ken stood trial in 2012, and after 3 weeks of testimonies, the jury took just 2 hours to find him guilty of all counts: first-degree premeditated murder, assault of a pregnant person with the intent to cause miscarriage or stillbirth, and 2 counts of possession of a firearm during a felony. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus an additional 65 to 100 years for the assault count. David Carrick. After a short career in the British Army, Carrick became a police officer with the Metropolitan Police in 2001, initially serving as a response officer in South London, before he joined the Armed Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Team in 2009. His employers investigated allegations that he was the perpetrator of domestic abuse in 2002. Work colleagues gave Carrick the nickname Bastard Dave, due to his propensity for cruelty. Between 2003 and 2020, Carrick abused and raped multiple women he met using Badoo and Tinder, often in Hertfordshire, England. Using his job as an armed police officer to gain their trust and inflate his importance, he developed multiple abusive relationships with women. He degraded his victims, including physical abuse with a belt, imprisonment in small spaces, urinating on victims, and rape. In October 2021, another woman reported to the police that he had date raped her a year earlier, deciding to come forward the day after. Wayne Couzens, another Met officer who served in the same unit at Carrick, was sentenced for the kidnapping, rape, and murder of Sarah Everard. On October 2, 2021, Carrick was arrested at his home address in Hertfordshire. Carrick initially pleaded not guilty to all the charges against him. In the wake of Carrick's conviction, the Metropolitan Police said the force was re-examining past claims of domestic abuse or sexual offenses against Met officers and staff, and said the force was looking into about 1,000 of its 45,000 employees. On February 7, 2023, he subsequently received 36 life sentences with a minimum term of 30 years plus 239 days, meaning he must serve that long in prison before becoming eligible for parole. He will become eligible for parole on May 2, 2052. Wayne Couzens. On the evening of March 3, 2021, 33-year-old Sarah Everard was kidnapped in South London as she was walking home to the Brixton Hill area from a friend's house near Clapham Common. She was stopped by off-duty Metropolitan Police Constable Wayne Couzens, who identified himself as a police officer, handcuffed her, and placed her in his car before transporting Everard to Dover. Couzens subsequently raped and strangled Everard, before burning her body and disposing of her remains in a pond in nearby Woodland. Couzens was arrested in Deal, Kent, first on suspicion of Everard's kidnapping and later on suspicion of her murder. The murder gave rise to widespread debate about the role of police in British society and women's safety in the UK. Couzens pleaded guilty to Everard's kidnapping and rape, and admitted responsibility for her death. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order on September 30, 2021. Couzens will never be released from custody. The cases outlined here provide just a glimpse into the disturbing reality of police corruption. While the majority of law enforcement officers serve their communities with integrity and dedication, the actions of a few tarnish the reputation of the entire profession.